from the expo floor at the AWS Summit in New York City. We just listened to the keynote. We had Werner, we had Matt Wood, we had a bunch of exciting customer speakers. Right now we're just introducing a little bit about what's happening today, what our favorite parts are, what we're looking forward to, and all that good stuff. So Ian, what are you looking forward to about the summit today?
So I'm looking forward to the program on Twitch. Obviously we've got a lot of product owners and service team members from here at AWS that are going to be talking about some of the announcements today, and also covering a few service announcements that were not covered in this morning's keynote with Werner and Matt. So if you want to stay tuned for everything that's new from AWS at the summit here in New York, then just stay with us for the programming for the rest of the day.
Randall?
I am excited about the Starbucks that is nearby. I am excited
That was not an advertisement.
I am excited about all of the cool customers that we're going to get to meet. We have a ton of stuff, as you said, on the Twitch stream, but I think the really cool part is actually being here in person and coming to see all of the different customers that are in the expo hall showing cool stuff and showing new products and kind of things that are built on AWS. The only problem is we're in New York City, and not everyone else is in New York City. So I think that's why we do a lot of this, is so that you don't miss out on the experience of being here. And we're going to do our best today to kind of bring the experience of the summit to you. So maybe we should recap the keynote. Let's talk about what happened.
So I think the coolest thing for me is that I got a hint yesterday that the T-shirt that Werner was wearing, obviously we're in a heated T-shirt battle, mine is better, but that it was going to be on theme for something that a customer was doing on stage at the keynote, and it is Fortnite, and Epic Games was up talking about how they're running their infrastructure on top of AWS. So I also have an iRobot vacuum cleaner, so I always like seeing which customers show up in the keynote and tell us what they've built on AWS.
Yeah, I have to say Fortnite is extremely popular in my house. My 15-year-old son is glued to that game and rarely leaves his bedroom or his desk because he's playing it, not 24/7, but pretty much all the time that he's awake and not at school. So I'm very glad to see that he's using AWS to do that. I think it's awesome.
I have not played Fortnite yet. I downloaded it and I opened it and I immediately died on my very first game. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to PUBG, which is another kind of survival game, and I've played that quite a bit.
It's great. It's really, really good.
And that was Chris Stile, right? He's director of, I guess, platform at Epic Games.
Yeah.
And
yep.
What I liked about it is they talk about the massive scale that they kind of undertake. So they use a lot of different services, from EC2 to containers to Kinesis streams. They talked about they had, what was that, 5,000 shards that he said?
Yeah.
That's insane. That's a lot of data that you're pushing through a streaming service. I was pretty impressed by that.
I think what's really interesting about game dev today is there's as much infrastructure hidden below the waterline to figure out what players are doing in the game, optimize design decisions and produce a better product, as there is involved in delivering the experience for the player. So there's a huge amount of their AWS Surface usage that comes from giving them visibility and insight into how the product is being used by their customers, the players. Every bit as technically challenging as running all of the thousands and thousands and thousands of engines that they need to manage all of those player sessions.
There was a Twitter session as well from, I think, an Epic Games employee who kind of said, we don't ever get the chance to talk about our infrastructure on a big stage like this. So if you look for, I forgot who it was who was tweeting, but if you look on Twitter, you can see a lot of other details about how they're using Kinesis, how they're using EC2. It's very interesting to read about.
I think actually one of my favorite parts in general is just all these things that happen in the background that so many people don't always get to talk about, and it's like, you don't even think about it as a player. You're just like, okay, I go and I play a game.
Yep.
And then it's like, but underneath that, in the background somewhere in their office, they're doing these incredibly technically complex things, and you don't even have to think about them because it just kind of works underneath what you're doing in the game.
That's why I think gaming use cases are so interesting for developers that are working in other industries. The finance industry probably feel that they're tackling really big, large-scale technical challenges, but the things that are being done in the creative industries, as we saw with the customer speaker from 21st Century Fox, they're just as complicated as anything that happens in banking, just as challenging as anything that happens in banking or finance. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of AWS. We get an opportunity to surface use cases that are outside of enterprise IT and show how challenging those use cases can be for those engineers to work on. I think it's a really interesting aspect of working here.
So I think we had some other AWS announcements that
right
came up this morning.
after Chris got off stage, we had Dr. Matt Wood presenting.
Yep.
And of course, we always enjoy some AI updates from him. SageMaker launched, I think, 2 kind of core updates, which is crazy because SageMaker has so many updates that it is impossible for me to keep up with them. And I write a lot of the blog posts for SageMaker, and in the period of time between the last blog post I wrote, which was automatic model tuning with hyperparameter optimization, they launched 4 new algorithms, they launched like 15 new features, and a ton of other stuff, and it's just, how do you do that in, what has it been, 3-4 weeks?
Yeah.
And there's that pace, it's not slowing down. It's been going that same rate since reInvent.
Yep.
So every single week there's been a new algorithm, a new feature, a new launch. But today we launched the streaming for custom algorithms. And that's really interesting because it essentially exposes a series of environment variables within your training environment. And those environment variables are piping in input directly from S3. So there are 2 main advantages to this. The first is that you start your job much faster because previously you would have had to download the entire data set that you were training on right onto the machine. The second benefit is if you're very read heavy, you're going to complete that job much faster because the throughput that you can get from S3, especially in this kind of optimized background agent that's running, is way higher than what you can get from an EBS local disk. So that was a pretty cool launch. And then we also had batch transform, which is another just like amazing change that basically, previously the way that you would get inferences from SageMaker is you would have this HTTP endpoint, and you could have multiple models hosted, do all kinds of A/B testing, all that good stuff. But now, instead of just having to submit your request single file to that endpoint, and I think they had a hard limit of like 10,000 requests per second on each individual endpoint, so you could spin up multiple endpoints. You can just push in as many things as you want, and it'll complete asynchronously, which is kind of an insane ability to just push through petabytes of data if you want. And people are really doing that. They're really like going through petabytes of data, which is kind of impressive.
I think we had a bunch of cool machine learning announcements this morning. So those are the 2 for SageMaker, but then I think there was one for Amazon Translate too. There was. We launched 6 new languages 6 new language pairs for Translate, and I wrote a quick post about that. And I think we had, what was it, Russian and Chinese traditional. We had Czech. Italian, Japanese, Russian, and Turkish. And then there's 6 that are already available, so that's Arabic, Simplified Chinese, French, German, Portuguese, and Spanish.
Gotcha. And then there are a couple more that are on the way, and sorry, I just don't remember what those are off the top of my head. There are a lot of languages that human beings speak. But I'm sure in the fullness of time, Translate will be able to translate all of them. And
this is cool for customers that want to do real-time content translation, right?
Right.
We had a customer on stage in London at a summit earlier in the year that was talking about just-in-time review translation. So when a foreign language-speaking customer comes to the copy of their website, they'll transcode the content on demand for the user, deliver it in local language, and cache it so they've got a copy of that content for the next time that a user with that particular language preference wants to read it. So you can embed this really high-speed neural machine translation service into your own content delivery workflows. You don't necessarily have to batch up and translate your whole corpus of material. You can do on-demand translation in just a couple of 100 milliseconds per request, which I think is a really cool way to do it, a really cost-effective way to do it as well.
So we had a couple of non-machine learning related ones this morning. So we had 2 for storage. So we had an S3 request rate increase, and then EC2 compute instances on AWS Snowball at the edge.
I guess that S3 rate increase is going to be relevant for customers that are using SageMaker, right? Because it now means that those SageMaker instances will be able to read data more quickly from the training data set.
I think it's actually relevant for customers using Athena, using Glue, using S3 Select, using Spectrum, all manner of different kinds of things that have S3 as part of the underlying store are going to be accelerated by this increase in rates. I think, that's just it's a default rate too, so I'm pretty sure you can, if you need to go higher, you can.
I also have to say that I love seeing updates to things like S3 too, because you're never like, oh my God, S3, but it's behind so many other things that it's not only is it just people that are working directly with S3, but think about how many things S3 is just backing. It's always kind of there, just hanging out, being awesome in the background.
It's amazing that S3 is now, it came out in 2007 or
2006.
2006. So it's more than 10 years old, and the pace of innovation hasn't slowed down, in my opinion. The VP of S3 is Mylin. I'm terrible at pronouncing her last name.
Bukovic.
Bukovic,
yeah.
Sorry. And
the real MVP right here.
I always love listening to her speak, and I like going to her sessions at reInvent because she just has this great vision for S3 and all of the other associated storage services. And if you have the chance to go on YouTube and watch some of her sessions, you'll just walk away like, this is awesome, I want to learn more.
Maybe one of our friendly neighborhood mods will put in a link from one of Mylin's talks for us. Maybe, if they can hear me. Maybe we'll. Woo! Oh, and actually, it looks like we have a link in here for Randall's blog section. So if anyone wants to read what the lovely Randall Hunt has written, some of his Twitch fans are giving that the thumbs up.
If it seems like I'm a little tired today, I've been locked in a cage typing furiously for the past 48 hours.
Yeah.
So we'll get some coffee in me and I'll be a little more awake.
We'll be good. So I think that's pretty much all of the announcements. Bring your own IP.
Bring your own IP, yeah, that's a pretty good one. I remember back when I worked for another company, we had to like purchase IP blocks. So way back in the day, we got like an entire, I think it was a Class C or something. It was huge.
And it's good for your reputation, right? That you can keep that same IP even if you're using it somewhere else. That the same IP address you're already using, you can now bring it in with you to your AWS resources.
Which is really useful for things like SES, where you have to send email and you don't want to be marked as spam and you don't want to have to spend a lot of time.
Or even running your own email service independent of that. You know?
Did you do that?
People do that, yeah. Yeah. So we didn't talk about the two compute services that were announced. Edge computing, so this is their capability to run EC2 instances, except they're not running on EC2, they're running on these Snowball edge compute devices which we have, which are like a ruggedized flight case full of hard disks or solid state drives with compute on board. And you can now provision EC2 instances down onto those devices, ship them anywhere in the world and run your compute jobs locally on that device in, say, a ship or an aircraft or some other piece of hardware which is distributed out in the field. I think that's a pretty cool use case, and there's an example use case on the AWS website of using that in a medical imaging scenario where you might hook that device up to, say, a scanner and then use that for medical imaging data pre-processing, which I thought was a pretty interesting use case.
So I think what we have coming up next, by the way, is all kinds of fun. We have service team interviews, we have special guest star interviews, we have some launch announcements coming up. So I just got the okay to say this, but the session directly following this will be one of those Twitch Launchpad announcements. So right after this, we'll be doing a launch live on Twitch. That's why it's called the Launchpad now. Now we get to launch things. Very clever naming convention. I love it. Then after that, I think we're covering pretty much all the bases. So we have machine learning sessions coming up. We have serverless sessions coming up. We have some deep dives. We have some customer segments. We have container segments. We have IoT. We got file system performance. So we have a whole day full of fun. Is there a session that you're looking forward to? What are you hosting today?
I'm hosting a session on enhancements to API Gateway just after lunch. So this is our service for integrating API endpoints together with services like AWS Lambda. We've got some new features that the service team for API Gateway are going to be covering in that session just after lunch today at 1:50.
More blog posts, or you're done?
I'm going to be probably writing more blog posts. That is going to be my job for the rest of this year.
So if anyone's here in the expo, there's a little door right here, and that's where we lock Randall to write all of his blog posts. There is no natural light or anything in there. We lock him back there.
There's food and water. But what we really need back there is caffeine. So there are a couple of other cool updates that I think we missed. We had Comprehend with the new syntax feature. You could do the word boundaries, and you can associate sentiment and stuff with those. There was channel synthesis in Transcribe, which is the ability to do different speakers and different sides of the conversation. And then there were, I think those were all the announcements. But
no, we got the new instance types as well.
All the new instance types, wow, yeah.
Oh yeah, pre-announcements.
R5 and the Z1.
Yeah, definitely the
That's
the R5
Z1
instances.
for those of you who are not British.
Sorry for my incorrect pronunciation of English. So the R5 is the latest generation of the memory optimized instance families that we have. These are great instances for running large relational or non-relational databases where you want to cache data sets in memory to deliver really good performance. And then the Z1 is a EC2 machine type with the highest clock speed. So for running single-threaded applications at the maximum possible speed directly on CPU, we have the Z1. It's a 4 gigahertz Intel CPU in that machine type. Actually really good for things like running the back end for things like game servers, where you want to have really high single-threaded performance for your C++ or C applications for things like Unreal Engine. So running those application types on Z1s would be a really good use case for that particular platform on EC2.
And there are also a number of updates that have been happening leading into the summit. So DynamoDB in particular has a new SLA. They've announced a bunch of enhancements over the past few, I guess, weeks and months. And just watching the pace of innovation there, the pace of innovation across the whole company has just been staggering. But seeing a couple of individual services like SageMaker and DynamoDB really get these big upticks, and even S3, even DynamoDB came out for the first time, I think, for AWS in 2012.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of all of a sudden we've got this new burst of features coming in. We have the ability to do point-in-time recovery. We have, and that's a feature in Aurora now as well. So we have the Aurora.
I think we talked about that at one of the summits this year, actually.
We did, yeah. And just the whole suite of features that are being launched is just impressive. I hope we'll get a chance to dive deeper on some of those for the rest of the day.
I think that's actually, to me, it's almost more impressive, right? It's because you think about the summits and reInvent being where we make all these announcements, but it's actually, they're happening all the time. Like if you're following AWS Cloud on Twitter, or what Jeff Barr and Randall are writing on the blog, like these features are coming all the time. So it could be, you could have like this amazing feature on just like a random Tuesday, that there's actually, the pace of innovation is so high that it's not just about the summits anymore or reInvent. They're just cool stuff happening all the time. So if you have any questions, by the way, on any of the services that we talked about here, or that as the interviews as they come up during the day today, hang out with us in the Twitch chat. We'll be answering your questions live. We'll be passing them on to the people on the stream. The moderators will be hanging out in the chat, helping you post some of these links to these blogs and these announcements and stuff like that.
The presentation team will be hanging out in Twitch chat when we're not on air as well. So if you've got questions for any of the team that you see on camera, just shoot us a message on Twitch, and we'll try to answer for you right now.
So we are just about wrapping up for this one. So we have another session coming up right after this. So we'll be live, I think, all day right up until like 6 o'clock Eastern or something, I think. So we'll be here all day. Next up, join us for an announcement, and then I think it's literally like back to back.
It is back to back. Stay tuned for the channel. There will be stuff all day long. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And I like that we have a little bit of everything this time, also. So we have. It feels very well-rounded. Like we have machine learning, we have serverless, we have API gateway, we have containers, we have customer talks, we have special super duper secret guest stars.
You may have seen some of them before.
It's a secret. So I've seen a couple questions in the Twitch. Some people saying that they feel sorry for Randall. We don't actually lock him in the room.
He's free to leave. He's in the room, but he's free to leave whenever he wants. Whenever he wants.
We feed him back there. It's totally. We don't actually
it's not
trap
like we're
him
starving
back there.
him.
Yeah, there's at least 8 boxes of sandwiches back there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Extremely.
That's not true. I've been locked in the room for like 48 hours.
Blink twice if you need Twitch to come rescue you.
Save me.
By the way, if you're here in person, because I've seen a lot of people watching at the monitors or hanging out behind the desk, come say hi to us in person.
Yeah.
Come watch on the monitors, come chat with us. I think it's hard to see this time because there's a wall up behind us, but if you jump really high and maybe get a step stool, I think you could wave from the back of the Twitch
or at least your
set.
hand
I would not encourage people
on
to do that.
twitch.tv/AWS. Yeah.
I am not sure about how sturdy this booth is.
Twitch says, no Randalls were harmed in the filming of this Twitch. Correct. We don't actually harm Randall. He is free to leave at any time. So join us after this. We are going to be wrapping up our intro, and then we'll be right back in just a couple of minutes. It'll be a special secret Launchpad announcement, so everybody stay tuned.
Thanks.
See you soon.